Thank you, everyone. We're back to the whole conversation around the African Export-Import Bank. But of course, we've spent the last 3-4 days talking about how to make finance work for Africa, that is making Africa's capital work for the continent, infrastructure, funding. But of course, we need the more financial services industry, the banks, the asset managers, the bank, the pensions, the investment banks, and everyone else in between to support what all the multilaterals are doing. And that's exactly what United Capital just did recently. Just a few weeks ago, opened the first asset management company of a Nigerian firm in West Africa, French-speaking, covering the entire CFA Fund region here. So that's where my guest is speaking to in the next few minutes. Of course, Ejikeme Okoli is the director in charge of Africa operations for the entire United Bank Capital, and is live here on set from the Transcorp Event Center here in Abuja. Good evening.
Good evening.
It's good to have you on set.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. How has it been over the last few days?
Yeah, I think the last few days has been packed. It's clear what Afrexim has been doing on the continent, as we just witnessed even the president confer one of the highest honors on Nigerian soil to the outgoing Afrexim president, Benedict Orama, with the GCON. Clearly, Afrexim has been very impactful, especially in facilitating capital flows to areas where it can have lasting impact. We also heard Heirs Holdings Group Chairman, UBA Group Chairman, also testify to the support received from Afrexim in the acquisition of some oil and gas assets, shell assets specifically, with $600 million. So clearly, the last 10 years under the leadership of the outgoing Afrexim president has been nothing short of impactful. And firms like us, United Capital, also draw on those kinds of inspiration, because we must continue to collaborate if Africa must develop and meet its full potential. Yeah. And from the stats you just reeled out now, we have started to do that by opening our first brick-and-mortar, full-fledged investment management business in Côte d'Ivoire.
All right. So we're going to get to that in just a few minutes. So it's a lot of tribute for President Benedict Orama for what he's done over the last decade, catalyzing investment across the various sectors, including the financial services, supporting banks, such as UBA, for example, to raise funds in a way that can go onward lending to other sectors of the economy, whether it's in Nigeria and the rest of Africa, where the bank operates. Now, when you talk about financing Africa and the role that private capital raising is, talk to me on that, broadly speaking.
Okay, so for private capital raising, clearly at United Capital and Heirs Holdings in general, Afrocapitalism is a mindset, is a philosophy that we have, which is that the private sector must always take the lead in trying to catalyze investments, catalyze capital, make sure it's deployed to sectors that can create jobs, improve lives, induce economic transformation, just so that there's general growth and economic development on the continent. Capital raising is key. Access to capital, access to finance is the bane of setting up any financial institution, whether it's forming capital, whether it's analyzing risk, whether it's ensuring that there's industry-wide, systemic-wide stimulation at an economic level, and only capital can drive that. Banks play their roles, different kinds of banks, from commercial banks, development banks like we're seeing with Afrexim, export-import banks, financial corporations, insurance. So the full-fledged financial system is key if Africa must continue to utilize its own resources to stimulate economic transformation, especially
in activities.
And activities, exactly. So capital raising is something all financial institutions must take seriously. United Capital is what we do, rather than always focusing on AIDS. I'm talking of Africa now as a continent, but trying to find ways where we can utilize our own resources. Financial inclusion is very important as we continue to play those roles, because banks can only do so much with the resources they have. And the only way to increase those resources is to ensure that most of the economic output of any country, state, locality, every unit is in the financial system. Once we start to build that pipeline of ensuring that GDP output goes back into the financial system, then we will have all the capital that's required, and capital raising wouldn't be so much of a bottleneck as it is currently in Africa. But institutions like United Capital and the broader UBA Hairs Holdings Group, it's what we believe in based on the Afrocapitalism philosophy, that it's time that Africans wake up, and with events like this at Afrexim, it's only just right that we're having this interview right at the heart of the Afrexim annual meetings, where we've seen testaments to how the bank has supported the flow of capital across the continent into areas that stimulate growth and development.
Support flow of capital across Africa for 10 years. And I'm sure some of the actions and expansion that we're seeing from local institutions such as United Capital moving into Cote d'Ivoire, spreading and stepping across the border to do a set of funds and raise capital and support the market. It's all part of expanding and providing one single roof for Africa to have what you call a handshake across the border, as it were, from from Anglophone speaking to French speaking countries. So now that you've set up the shop, which was just a few weeks ago in Cote d'Ivoire, in Abidjan, of course, which is now, where do we go next with the new mutual funds that was launched a few days ago?
Okay, so to talk a bit more about the mutual funds.
The mutual fund,
yes, excited.
This is about 10 billion CFA fund there?
Yeah, for each of them. So there were two funds. Yeah.
So we're talking about 20
billion CFA
as a total package.
As a total package. So we've gotten secured commitments from, of course, investors towards the funds. First is a diamond fund. So even the way we are naming our products, we are being innovative, because one of the challenges we've seen with capital markets, adopting capital market solutions, is that most times it sounds too technical for the everyday person. Not everybody knows what bonds are or equities are. So sometimes we make the mistake of thinking we are talking to ourselves. But meanwhile, those we are supposed to bring into the system are not necessarily finance people. They are in other walks of life. So we've found ways to make our product names a bit more exciting, make them more of lifestyle solutions, or even tailored to the sectors that you're targeting. So the Diamond Fund is really a bond fund, and in French, it's FCP obligataire, UEMOA obligataire. Obligataire means obligation, which is bond. And then we have
everybody loves Diamond. At least everyone would like to have one.
Exactly.
I'm sure you likely have one.
Of course. My wife, though.
They say diamond is forever.
And diamonds are a girl's best friend.
Oh, here we go.
That's another one.
You know a lot that I do. But what about this fund? Tell me about this fund.
Okay, so?
And I'm sure this will go within the UEMOA region,
yes,
French-speaking West Africa.
Of course.
What's the target in terms of who invests in it?
Okay.
What's the duration? What's the yield? What are the benefits in the package?
Thank you. So for the Diamond Fund, which is the bond fund, it's an investment fund that pulls together, it's a collective investment scheme that will be deployed to fixed income securities issued by sovereigns of the 8 UEMOA countries and their corporates. Okay. So 70 to 100% are invested in those bonds. So that also deepens the capital markets there. It also forces, or it's a stimulant or a catalyst for even the issuers, the sovereign issuers or the corporates, to know that now there's outlets, for raising funds or raising capital from fund managers and, of course, the general public.
Break it down for me. You're talking about bonds raised by big companies, for example, on the BRVM, Cote d'Ivoire, the likes of ETI, the likes of the telecoms, and other institutions.
Yeah, so the second
fund,
we're
talking about?
The second fund is the Diversified Fund. So now that is a mix of bonds, fixed income securities, and equities. Equities traded on the BRVM. Now, the equity portion...
And that's the Ivorian Stock Exchange?
Yes, for the West African...
For the West Africa, for the French-speaking West Africa. Yes, of course.
Yeah, all 8 of them. So corporates who come to want to list on an exchange, list on the BRVM.
Yes.
So then it aggregates, investments that can be deployed as equity capital in these companies. So that way, there's capital preservation, and there's a lot more diversification. There's room for a higher upside. So the bonds provide stability to the fund, while equities provide room for decent returns. So these are
capital appreciation, whatever,
exactly,
which the BRVM trading day by day brings to
exactly. So that would be deployed to whether it's telecoms, whether it's the agricultural sector, to financial sector as well, its health sector. That's why it's a diversified fund. So it's a fund that will definitely be stimulating economic growth in these sectors across the broader UEMOA region. And it's also an incentive for companies that want to play in those markets or who want to list their institutions in those markets to see that there are funds that can be attracted as equity capital, into their institutions. So it's our own way of fostering regional integration, bridging the gap between Francophone and Anglophone, West Africa.
West Africa.
Perhaps today we heard the launch of PAPS cards.
Of the card. Yes, the payment, the Pan-African payment settlement system.
By Afrexim.
Yes.
So all of these are coming at times where it's clear that Africans want to foster regional integration. At some point, we might see a single African currency. It's something we will get to eventually. If Europe could do it, then I'm sure Africa can.
If we get in banking, if we get in a single card, if we get in payment, so a single currency might not just be too far away from now.
And if it happens, that's really the game changer for Africa, because then each country, regardless of your size, will be less susceptible to global shocks. It will be more protective. Your natural resources will find better value in foreign markets. And then, so Africa itself will be less susceptible to volatilities in the global market, will be less cheated on by sharks, if I should use that word. And we heard that so many captains of industry who are promoting Africa, especially from the private sector. So it's clear that while that may not be too far away, it's something for policymakers to think around. And Afrexim taking the charge on trying to foster cross-border solutions is something that we also take a cue from. With United Capital now, those who are our clients all over the world who invest in our products mainly regulated in Nigeria can now also be exposed to the funds, the solutions we have
in the UEMOA region.
I
was about to ask if it was just for the UEMOA region only, and if the fund allows for other investors to come in. There are a number of investors, for example, in Dubai, in the UAE, that our funds are flowing into Africa massively from that region in recent years, according to report. So this could also go into such fund on the BRVM that you've just listed.
Yes, and why it's a major attraction for global investors.
Yes.
The ZOF.
Oh, by the way, you've got the UBA's got an office in Dubai already.
Yes.
So you already post where you already have the pipe. You already dig the pipeline.
I mean, we belong to a group that it's global in coverage.
You dug that pipeline about 2-3 years, about a few years ago, and now you list the fund here, so you get where the money is going.
Exactly.
Smart fellows.
So as affiliates, so it's really about collaboration. It's about building ecosystems that aggregate capital and make Africa work. Because really, all the opportunities are here. We heard Dr. Sachs earlier today to say we must think better, we must expect better, and put in the work such that in the next 30 years, Africa should be the growth driver of the world. China did it for the last 20, 30 years, growing at over 5% consistently, regardless of recessions or booms or busts. And we have the population in Africa. Besides India and China, only Africa has over 1 billion people as its population. So if we continue to see Africa as one unit, because sometimes maybe the fragmented nature of Africa itself is beginning to work against us. So we should start to see ourselves as one continent, and the private sector is the one leading that charge. Once we've gone far, clearly the public sector, policymakers will catch up, and that change that we want to see through public-private partnership will then be what will take us to the promised land. And I think
financial flows and making financial flows easy, payments, trade, is a sine qua non for everything. And I think there's anything the Europeans got well done very quickly was to open Europe for trade across borders. And of course, you can begin to go across various currencies until they came up with the euro as a single currency, and then things move on from there to yet another level. So which is very interesting. But let me just take you back to the likes of African Export-Import Bank and a few other multilaterals on the continent, whether it's Shelter Afrique or whether the Trade Development Bank or the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, the EBID. What are some of the learning curve for those of you who are asset managers, investment banks, and others, in how multilaterals work? Where is the meeting point, if there's any, between all of you?
Now, in terms of meeting points, it's really about a congregation of objectives. Because the primary objective is the same, clearly from meetings like this. And it's instructive because when we launched in Cote d'Ivoire, it was on the sidelines of the AFDB meeting.
I remember that.
Exactly, and you were there. Now on the sidelines of the Afrexim meeting, we are talking about
the new mutual funds.
So clearly, it's clear that even the private sector and multilateral institutions have the same mindset around developing the continent. And we don't see ourselves as competitors, but we see ourselves as providing complementary solutions, depending on the solution that's required. Now, once we see ourselves as one big ecosystem, African institutions promoting economic development on the continent, every institution has its part to play. So whether it's facilitating trade, like Afrexim does on the export-import side, or it is moving capital into developmental projects like the AFDB. There's also Africa Finance Corporation, which also plays a major role in all of this.
A very critical institution as well.
Exactly.
Yes. So whether it's upstream, midstream, and with folks like yourself playing both midstream and downstream.
Exactly. It's really about developing the right capabilities and
products.
Products and solutions. I like to call them solutions because if it hasn't met the objective of the client
or the investor,
as the case may be, then if it's just a product has the mindset of the business, the one creating it. But we think in terms of solutions because we want to meet the needs of the investor. So whether or not I make money, once the investor is satisfied first, then I find a way to commercialize that solution. So that's the way we think, at United Capital. And it's the same mindset we've seen, especially with the crop of leaders we've had in a lot of these multilateral institutions. Two stand out, and it seems like this year they're both winding down. Ejikeme Additional on the AFDB side, and Orama on the Afrexim side.
They're just retiring, they're not tired. Because I'm sure they've got a whole lot of fire, the steam under the hood, as it were, as the saying goes. To still support institutions, support at various levels, governments, including the Nigerian government, a lot of experiences they've gathered, drawn in international organizations that Afrexim Bank is, and the ODB at the other side. And of course, the EFC as well, with Samaila Zubairu as well, that the three of them, if you just want to go with those three, and a few others in which Nigeria has very critical interests, such as Shelter Africa. So that's a whole lot that we did. We just want to wish you all the best, and thank you so much for what you guys are doing. I'm sure when the fund closes, the listing is going to follow and things like that. Right?
So yes, the funds have already been approved. So for the Diversified Fund, which is on both the fixed income side and the BRVM, because the way the Cote d'Ivoire market works is also a very interesting market. So the license that allows you to do advisory and issuing house also allows you to be a broker. And then for fund managers, so fund managers work closely with brokers to develop that market. So of course, the brokers we work with will definitely be connecting us to investors who will be interested in our funds. And there are a lot more to come. Maybe I'll leave it at that for now.
A lot more to come.
Yes, especially on the fund side. We'll be creating funds now, not just interested in the assets being invested in, but even the economic sectors that are targeted. You're going to be hearing about funds for agri-sector, cocoa producers.
We've had two interviews. Don't tell me there's a third one in the making.
There is.
Let Rice News be the first to know.
Definitely.
And that's why I'm interested in. Just make us the first to know.
Definitely.
As long as that
you
happens,
have my word.
We'll have this handshake again for another time. Thank you so much for coming tonight and being part of the Afrexim Bank 2025 annual meetings. Ejikeme Okoli, who is the director in charge of Africa operations at United Capital.